So this is the starting point. This is my actual childhood Game Boy Color that has never once left my side and that you probably have already seen before if you've ever watched my stuff. I've honestly wanted to make a project based on it for years, so when I rolled the dice for this Hughesletter edition and it landed on this green, I knew immediately what was going to happen. And I also knew right away that I wanted this to be more than just my own little build. Unlike anything I've ever sewn before, this whole project was start to finish created so that other people could make it too. That is probably why you're here, so I'll save the waxing philosophical about colored electronics at the turn of the millennia for later, and start by telling you how I got started. Right now, by the way, you're watching a preview of the full 45-minute video that's available on my Patreon, along with the 31-page pattern. You can pick that up as part of a membership or as a one-time purchase. It's got almost 100 hand-drawn diagrams and really detailed tutorials. Like, I genuinely lost my mind a little bit trying to make this process clear and accessible so that anyone who wants to can jump in and make this. So I hope you check it out, and let's jump into the jumping in part. Part 0, the game plan. This extremely messy brainstorming session got sketched after looking at some pencil cases I have that I like and use a lot, and checking out a million examples of sewing kits and needle books online. I noticed that a lot of pre-made kits you can buy are like for doing quick repairs, which is mostly not what I'm really doing when I'm sewing on the go. Like, I don't really need 5 different colors of thread, I can just bring the thread for whatever project I'm currently working on, but it would be nice to have tools like snips and a seam ripper already packed up without needing to go through all of my own stuff. I also thought it'd be fun to have some little containers for stuff like beads or sequins that I'm working with that I want to bring with me. Again, this is all based off of shit I have actually done in the past and therefore will do again. I have been known to bring like a couple hundred sequins on a plane, and it might be better if I was able to bring slightly less. I'll confess, I had honestly never heard of a thread catch before I started looking at other people's handmade sewing kits, but now I'm like, where has this idea been all my life? A thread catch is literally just a rough piece of fabric like a felt or a wool, sometimes folded over, where you can put either pre-cut bits of embroidery floss or your trash when you snip the ends of something you're sewing. I will probably end up treating mine like a trash can. I never really know what to do with the excess bits of threads that I cut off after I finish sewing on a snap or something, and I never want to be like shedding tiny bits of fiber when I'm on transit. But one of the first, biggest, most earth-shattering to me ideas I had to kick off this whole thing was making the needle book act like a cartridge in a back pocket. I figured if I patterned it right, the pile of the Minky could help out keeping a cartridge in place, and the idea of pulling out my needles like an old game cartridge makes me giddy. I'm dizzy with joy over it. And honestly, I'm not super particular about my needles, what kind I use, but I figured I could at least make a rough game plan to group some similar types together and figure out how many pages I needed for a little flip book. It's all subject to change, but it was a great way to get things sorted while I waited for my fabric to arrive. Part 0.0, the materials. I usually get Minky from Cali Quilt Co. on Etsy. I'm not affiliated, I'm just a customer. I got the jade green because that looked like it would be the brightest of all the greens without being a highlighter. I want bright, not neon. I know it's not a picture-perfect match, but it'll be close enough, and honestly, I don't regret skipping the dye bath like color matching ordeal. I think the color is totally fine. There's a full and extremely detailed list of materials in the pattern, and I say it in the instructions, but just to repeat myself, if you have a stash, you should bust it with this project. When you're looking at like the materials page in this pattern, it might look like a lot of stuff, but the amount you actually need of almost everything listed is like microscopic. The only fabric I bought for this project was the lime green Minky, of course, and my 2 felts. I found a really cool stiff felt that was a darker gray on one side and a lighter gray on the other, and this soft like heathered periwinkle, both at Mood. My Notions shopping trip was way more elaborate just because I don't have a ton of embroidery floss on hand and I needed to grab the zipper and the elastics and the piping and the bias tape. I ended up sharing this particular garment district haul on stream for patrons. There were also definitely some impulse purchases, like, did I need this needle threader? No, but it was green and I want green gadgets in my green kit. So with the green Minky outside pretty locked in, the question was, what about the inside? I really wanted a stash bust, so I looked through every single funky pattern in my whole stash. It was tricky because I felt like using another green would be just too much of one color, but a lot of my other prints felt too specific in one direction or another. Like, the point of a game system is that it can change based on the game you're playing, or in my case, the project I'm sewing. I wanted the lining to be, you know, a little zesty, but also neutral. And I also didn't want to pick anything too textured to keep the inside tidy. You want to generally line with smooth fabrics, even slippery fabrics, fabrics because you want to be able to brush it clean? The answer finally came to me when I dug into my bin of fabrics that are too small to even bolt, and I rediscovered what was left of an old shirt that I used to love in like 2017. One of my stash rules is that if I'm saving a piece of clothing to use as fabric, I have to commit to cutting it up for bolting. That way I don't have a bunch of like old leggings on my shelf. And look at this print, the hand-drawn stars, the like black and white and gray color scheme. I've been saving this for years, and I think now is the moment. The last thing before I get started is me taking a minute to design some little decals in Procreate. Since the fabric I just landed on is that hand-doodled star vibe, I go with that, and I'm just kind of drawing some sparkles and stars and things that look a little wonky on purpose. And yes, I am tracing over a phone photo of all the objects that I'm planning on embellishing so that I can have a consistent line weight between projects. If you've got a Cricut and you want to use these same embellishments, I've included the image files and measurements and stuff in the post attachments, but it is completely optional. Heat transfer vinyl or HTV can also be cut with regular scissors and stuff. It's just harder to get really precise, and transferring that HTV is actually step 1, so let's go! Yay! Part 1, the needlebook. Since this whole project is very much not my go-to color scheme, I thought it'd be fun to make the needlebook my usual purple rainbow iridescent nonsense. I bought this rainbow dot purple minky from Cali Quilt Co. a few years ago to hit a shipping minimum because I thought it was neat, and this felt we already saw from Mood is going to be the main fabric for the pages. Then this iridescent spandex I bought for a home office improvement project that I still haven't tackled. I'm getting the HTV transferred onto the spandex before I do anything else, since that's what I'm going to use for the little sticker applique on the needlebook. I did end up redoing this part later so I could tweak the design a bit to make it look a little more hand-drawn, but there's nothing different about what I'm doing as far as weeding the vinyl and using a presser cloth to make sure you don't mess up whatever fabric you're using. I just use a muslin scrap for my presser cloth. It looks so nasty on camera by the end of a project, but it's worth it to not melt your fashion fabric. Later on that night, with an astonishingly color-coordinated beverage, sponsor me LaCroix, I'm starting on the pages of the needlebook. I get the 2-page pieces stitched together with a line down the middle to create the little billfold. You're so welcome to make yours with more or less pages, just know that it might affect the fit of the pocket later on, so just be ready to make adjustments if you do that. Then it's time to start figuring out what goes on the pages, and let me be so clear, this is why you should make your cartridge in whatever your favorite color is, because it makes stash busting so much easier. I have a ton of light purple lace trim and fabric left over, mostly from the Lavender Town Witch, but also from other projects that I also used in the Witch. I'd already made a loose plan when I was sketching, but I definitely want to make sure it all works before I start stitching things down. With single layer felt pages, I'll be able to see the back of any stitching on the other side of the page, and I know I want to hide machine stitches as much as possible to preserve that handmade look. Also, don't forget to take a second here and trim any excess length from the bottom of the pages. I think I trimmed about 1/8 of an inch from the center piece. This is totally normal, it's just the turn of cloth. Since my plan is feeling pretty solid here, I'm machine stitching down some of my trim scraps. All of this stitching's wrong sides will either be hidden by another piece of embellishment or by the ends of the book cover. That's not mandatory, it is just an aesthetic preference of mine. So this is where we're at right now. The first page of the book is going to be a totally useless bit of decoration, just for fun, which I'm going to do later. For the second page of the book, I'm going to have a scrap of spandex lace hand sewn along the edges to hide those machine lines. I know the hand sewing will look nice from both sides, and I can hide the knot under the fabric. Here on the next page, it isn't attached yet, but I did some chunky hand stitches on a spare piece of felt. These stitches can hold some other needles or something, and I think I'm just going to fuse that on the page here so I cover the machine stitching of this big lace trim here on the next page. I think that's the extent of my plan to make sure that I hide all of the ugly machine stitched backs. So I'm cutting the bit of spandex lace fabric and I'm getting started on that hand tacking. Yabba dabba. And as a note, I'm going a little in depth here for this video, mainly because I kind of gloss over this in the pattern. A needlebook is really individual, and I'd honestly recommend doing what you have the spare materials for and what you think you would actually need out of a needlebook, instead of treating this like instructions, you know? So now I'm gonna fuse that chunky stitch piece of felt on the main page, and let's talk about fusing really fast because this project calls for a lot of it. Heat and Bond is the name brand for a fusible tape that can be used to join fabric pieces. And when I say tape, I just mean trim. It's like a ribbon, it's not actually sticky. I'm mostly using a 1/4 inch width for this project, but I think here and there I switched to like a 3/4 because that's what I had lying around. It doesn't really matter. All you do is iron it. the glue heats up, the fabric melts together. There's more detailed information in the pattern appendices, but my golden rules of fusible is 1, to always use a presser cloth, and 2, to always do a test. I'll be so honest, in fusing this specific pattern piece, I think I went a little too far. I think it ended up a little flat. Not a catastrophe for the needlebook, but a word of warning, since we're going to be doing a lot of fusing, it is literally playing with fire. It is very much a you can't unring the bell kind of situation. But now for the really important bit, my useless bit of bead decoration. I'm stitching on some buttons so that I don't forget to leave margins for later around the edge, and I'm going through my stash to find some sequins and beads that work well together, and I think I'm just gonna vibe. The bugle beads can guide us towards a sparkle shape, but otherwise, I'm just watching Dimension 20 and zoning out. I want to feel excited and inspired when I open this book, so that's what this is gonna be. Like a fabulous little North Star. It's like dopamine dressing, but for a microscopic bit of beading. Like, even if I don't feel like sewing, if I open my needlebook and see this, I bet I'll be like, damn, maybe I do feel like sewing. So with that, the pages are done. They are full of spots to hold needles and pins and whatever other sharp metal I desire. Tapping back in on the sticker applique, this is the new version of the HTV. I used 2 different colors of vinyl and hand outlined my logo designed by Molly Doyle. It looks a little more wobbly and handmade now, which is just the way I want it. Getting down to business on the needlebook's outer shell. I've got 2 pieces of canvas interlining and the main minky fabric. I'm going to fuse these pieces together using some heat and bond cut to size. You can also see in the placement here, there's a little gap left along the spine so that this will be able to close easier. We're going to basically be wrapping all these raw minky edges around the stiff canvas interlining and fusing that in place. But there's other steps mixed in, so don't rush ahead just yet. Here I'm using the heat and bond trim instead of the yardage earlier cut to size, but to be clear, there is absolutely no difference in content between the different widths of trim or yardage. It's just whatever you find easiest to work with. There is nothing stopping you from stacking multiple widths of heat and bond to cover the same ground. With the long sides wrapped, it's time to fuse the sticker applique on. This is also a good time to start getting comfy with the way Minky's pile can shift things around. I definitely found that things would sometimes end up like a 1/16 of an inch off from where I'd place them, so just work carefully and double check before you go hard on the iron. I did pick up some rainbow metallic embroidery thread, and I'm using that for my satin stitches along the side. Game Boy cartridge stickers have these really distinctive silver bars on either side, and I wanted to pay homage to that. Also, you might notice in the HTV design, I did include a tiny little ESRB E for everyone shape. Back on the ironing board, I'm fusing a quick, tiny little scrap of Minky in the center of the top and bottom edges to even out that bulk. You'll also notice I trimmed away some excess from those corner folds so that things lay flatter. As I am editing, I'm realizing I did not get a shot of me sewing on the front button, but I did that. Pretend that you're seeing me do it here. It's like this footage, except with one big sparkly button in the center. Yay. Whoa. With the button stitched down, like you definitely saw on camera, I'm gonna actually pin the pages in place so I can start inserting the elastic for said button. This is gonna help us get a better sense of the fit. Using an awl, I'm poking a hole through the shell fabric right along the fold line where the Minky will wrap around the canvas. I'm not tearing the fabric or cutting or punching anything. The awl just pushes the fibers to the side. This is also what I use to insert grommets when I'm making a corset. Now I'm threading the very thin elastic through that hole, and I'm tying a big ol' knot on the inside. You'll want to leave a tail of about 1 inch for some extra securing. I'm also poking a second symmetrical hole with the awl, and don't worry, I've marked all of these spots on the pattern file. With the knot resting against the fabric, I'm measuring about 2 1/4 inches out and making a little mark. This way, when I thread the elastic back into that second hole, I know exactly where I want to tie the second knot. Now be sure to do a little test here with the pages pinned in place to make sure the tension is correct. Different elastic can have varying levels of, elasticity, and this is the time to see if you need a little more or a little less give for your specific materials. But once that is done, you can just flip and fuse the raw edge, same as the other side. And the shell is donezo. When I made mine, I thought the elastic felt secure enough resting against the fusible without tacking down the tails, but feel free to do that if you want before you fuse everything. So now we've got our shell and we've got our gorgeous pages. You know we're gonna bring them all together by fusing the edges. This is why it was so important to keep that margin on the beading on the first page. Because while yeah, you can definitely stack some fabric scraps to try and keep your beading protected from the heat, I found the best way to do this was just being really targeted and only hitting the iron on that 1/4 inch outside. Also, I might have said it before, but I'll say it again, there's an appendix in the pattern with all my tips about fusibles. Definitely give that a read before you start blasting anything on high heat. And as you're fusing the shell to the pages, there should be a little pinch of fabric in the center spine to account for turn of cloth. I will be totally honest though, I think mine mostly disappeared as things shifted around in process, so don't lose sleep over it if that happens to you too. And you know what? Regardless of what you did or did not mess up at any point along the way, the Game Boy cartridge inspired needlebook is now done. I've got mine loaded up with sharps on the second page, some pins on the third and fourth, and the last two pages are tapestry needles and crewels. Was making this kit basically the first time I paid attention to needle types? Absolutely, but now I have lived, laughed, learned, and made a delightful little holster for all of them. So thanks for joining me on this little side quest. I super hope you check out the full pattern to see how the rest of this turns out, and maybe even make your own. That would be so cool. I think I would cry to see someone actually make this. Don't forget to stay weird and stay hydrated, and let me know what color your Game Boy was in the comments, or iPod. I don't know when you were born. Maybe you're a baby right now. I'm not here to judge. I'm just here to say thank you. Really hope you like the pattern, and I'll catch you next time.